Right on. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Welcome to the Keystone Big Book Study Workshop with a program of recovery laid out by the first 100 men and women in our basic text. Sobriety is April 8, 1989. It's not my first introduction to AA, but it was my first introduction to the program as outlined in our basic text, and I've been sober ever since. So why don't we open with the Serenity Prayer? What do we need for a good meeting? God.
We need God.
Grant me the
serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference.
Good to be here tonight. I've been working lots, so we're doing second film crew, so I've been working like 12, 14-hour days, so it's really good to see you all here. Missed last week. I was doing exciting stuff, but nothing more exciting than this. I really appreciate you guys being here tonight and a part of this. We're on We Agnostics, which is surprising if you did a survey, how many people within our own fellowship hasn't read it because they don't feel they need to because they're not agnostic, right? Or just hasn't been through it or just skimmed through it and don't understand the full purpose of it being where it is in the book, right? So if we kind of do a kind of recap of where we actually are, it talks about page 44. Well, it kind of ends with this thought on page 43. It says, once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. And then on the next page, it kind of says the whole purpose of everything we've been doing up to this point. It says, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. So which is interesting here, I think they're kind of questions. Have I learned something? Yes, can I explain this thing? Would I be able to explain it to my sponsor or a sponsee if they ask me what I learned in the preceding chapters? And they talk about, we hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. Right? And have they done that? What do you think, Ray? You think they've done a good job? Who are you, by the way? What's going on?
I'm Ray Shepard. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Friday date, the 19th of October, 1988. And for that, my family is eternally grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we look at what the authors are saying here, we hope that we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, and they spent 4 chapters, they spent 51 pages describing the real alcoholic, the chronic alcoholic, and they've done not just an adequate job, they've done an incredible job pointing out the problem that we have, not only with the body, that's not the problem the author said, but the problem with the mind. And they delve into the depth of this problem of the mind, this disordered way of thinking, this malady of the mind that we have. And they tell us that, it's just not a case of dysthinkia. It's really a problem that we have with trying to make excuses because we don't know why we drink, and we're going to throw excuses out there. And they call this in a strange mental twist, how we twist the truth, or a strange mental blank spot, a peculiar mental blank spot, where we suddenly find ourselves drinking and don't realize we're drinking. So that's where they brought us, and they're hoping that by these 51 pages that we've gone over, we will have learned something of alcoholism.
And so what I do with people I work with, sponsees and people in group, you should be able to tell me what type of alcoholic you are by this stage of the game. Right? You should know what type of alcoholic you are. And it's really interesting. If you ask people at your next meeting, hey, what type of alcoholic are you? People are going to look at you really strange because they don't understand that terminology. And then when you say, well, I'm a real alcoholic, people get upset with that because they think that you're trying to outclass them. But it's a specific thing in regards to the condition of the mind, placing us where we are in this position. So they talk about, if I have this thing, right, and I find I can't stop when I want to, and while drinking, I can't control the amounts I drink, because they're pretty tricky, right? Because if I could stop when I wanted to, then why do you keep on drinking? So if I can't control the amounts I take while drinking, why do you keep doing it? So it kind of does a loop. So it kind of gets you on that one. So they talk about here, to one who feels atheist or agnostic. They said, then you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So they're moving from the condition and the illness part of the conversation, from the body and the mind and the examples, and they're moving into, well, if I need to have this thing, how could we navigate you through your thinking so you could participate in the saving of your own life by adopting these suggestions that we're going to put out that we've done based on our own experience. So this is the introduction to help us to get to step 3, right? This is the beginning of the introduction to step 3, because I'm going to need to make a decision. If I made a decision here that I need to have this thing, or they talk about, go ahead, to one who feels he is atheist.
To one who feels he's atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible, but to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety.
And we understand what that means is because of the malady. As they explained on page 23, this condition of the mind that places one beyond human aid. They call it a phenomenon, an unexplainable event that happens with us. So they try to explain it by here are their characteristics. This is what it looks like for people who have it. This has kind of been our experience. The first 100 men and women all agree on this malady as being the second symptom in alcoholism. Now, circuit speakers and treatment centers like the obsession to be the second symptom in alcoholism, right? Because they could see, feel, and touch that, right? They don't understand about being beyond human aid. That's where a lot of people don't understand. You mean after all your experience, you went drinking again? You did it again? We're again kind of people. Yes. Did you want to do it? No, I didn't want to do it. There was no thought whatsoever. I found myself drinking when I didn't want to drink. 11 years of in and out. And I couldn't explain, or nobody could explain to me why I kept on drinking when I didn't want to drink. So now I know why. So when they call this thing a phenomenon, an unexplainable event on page 37, and I understand this condition, and I have it, it puts me in a kind of scary position. That means there was nothing I could do about my last relapses, and there's another one coming, because that's the step 1 promise. They're saying, well, they're giving me an opportunity here to have a different story. They're saying, well, we have a new story for you. It's not your story, it's our story. It's the collective story of Alcoholics Anonymous. The miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous that the doctor witnessed back when Bill went to treatment for the 3rd time and went through a course of action with Ebby and allowing him to enter this relationship with a power greater than himself. When he sat with Ebby, he had a hard time with this. He didn't have a hard time with what Ebby was presenting because his ideas of miracles were revised right then and there. He was having a hard time with his own thinking. Most people who have a problem with God in step 2 is their own understanding that they're having a hard time with. It's not our understanding. And I've had people say, how do you know that? Because if you understood our conception, you wouldn't have any problem with that. That's what this whole thing is about. They're saying collectively, they all agreed that there was a solution. We found a way out which we can absolutely agree. Join in harmonious and brotherly action, right? So the great news that books carries is that we've found a common solution that we could all agree upon. So I need to understand what they're agreeing on, wouldn't I? I need to understand what solution they're offering. They didn't go here, well, you need this, so let's go with your idea. How many places in here has it stopped and said, well, let's go with your idea. What do you think? They haven't done that for a reason, right? Oh, we like to tell people what we think and our idea, don't we, Ray?
Oh, well, or we're asked, how's that working for you?
and we get all pissed off, like, what do you mean by that, right?
Yeah.
So then they reiterate down here, for miracle, they go back to the obsession. Our first obsession is ourselves and fixing self with self. I know none of you fine people have ever had that problem, coming up with your own program, your own game plan, and tell everybody around you how you're going to combat something you haven't been able to combat. How this time it's different. Last time you didn't mean it, but this time you mean it. Any of my people here?
Mm-hmm.
Right? This time I mean it. Well, what about the last time? Oh, no, I didn't really mean it. But you spent a lot of time and energy trying not to have the same event happen again, relapse. So when I see here that they revisit this idea about fixing myself with self, they go, well, if a mere code, what was that, Ray? What are they saying?
If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and such philosophies didn't save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all of our might.
Okay, but hold it there. Wait, don't ruin the surprise, Ray. Easy. Let's back up here. Let's go to this section. We like this section because everybody has these great ideas on how it's going to be different this time. Like, a lot of us love page 417 till we realize it's not the answer to our problems. But we're hoping it's the answer to our problem, because if it's the answer to our problems, then we don't need to do the rest of this. We're looking for a way that we don't have to do this. That's the first obsession. Most people that I've dealt with in the last 36 years, Ray could probably say the same thing. They've tried every other way but this. And they act surprised that we're not surprised that we know they haven't done this. How do you know I haven't done this? Well, here's your chip. Right? Welcome back. Right? Because I've never seen anybody who's been through this, as laid out in our basic text, who's gone through it the way it's outlined, who's had the experience that they talk about and maintained it, who's ever relapsed, including me, a chronic relapser. I've never met one person who's ever relapsed as the result of the maintenance of this thing. I had a group, there's over 115 people in that group. And I asked people, how many people has relapsed as the result of not thoroughly following our path? Everybody's hand went up. I said, how many people has relapsed here as the result of thoroughly following this path? Guess how many hands went up? None.
Zero. Yeah.
Right? But you can't see it. So they're talking about, why doesn't these things work for people like us? We've already established that because we have this underlying condition that we can't see, feel, and touch. They call it a phenomenon. And when it suddenly happens, the ounce of whiskey in the milk, or as I crossed the dining room threshold, or the other guy thought relapse was unthinkable based on all the work he'd done on himself. In all cases, they suffer from the same condition, this malady that they can't see, feel, and touch. And after they drink, they're going, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm not supposed to be doing this. I don't know, anybody have that experience here? And then the body says, oh yeah, you're supposed to be doing this. And people say, what are you doing? Having another drink. What are you doing? Right? Okay, so why can't me working on me if I have this condition work? Because
the needed power isn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were insufficient. They failed utterly. The lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power?
So see that question mark? That question mark isn't for you to answer. They're going to answer it because they're the one taking us through this. A lot of people, I've seen studies go, well, I know where to find it. How many people in step 2 thought it was a quest to go find God? How many people has talked about in step 2 their relationship with God, which is, it isn't. Right? When Ebby talked to Bill, Ebby talked about a course of action he did to have this experience. Bill seen it was possible to have this experience if he went through the same course of action. It was only a matter of being willing to build in myself what I saw my friend did, something like that, right? It's only a matter of being willing to build what I saw my friend, right? Was willing to do the same thing he did. And that's where we're kind of at. So where and how were we to find this power that creates a psychic change or spiritual experience? We'll look at that in a second, but Well,
that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem.
So what that says is it goes back to the guy over here on page 42, quite as important, right? The spiritual principles will answer all my problems back to there is a solution where they all agree on the way out. Back in Bill's story, his friend promised when these things were done, he would have the elements of a way living that answered all his problems. It's not about the knowledge of the steps. It's about what the steps get you through this process. So you could have all the knowledge in the world. We just talked about that earlier. It availed us nothing. I could know the steps inside and out. I know people who know the book quite well, but they miss the most important parts of it. They could reiterate it. They could verse things this off, but they miss the whole point of it. And what's the whole point is the process that's outlined in this book, right? You notice they haven't said the steps yet, right? The main purpose of this book is to enable you to have an experience. No, it's to find a power, which is the same thing. When you find this power, which is the first thing that needs to happen, as the result of this, really, you have this experience. So the confirmation of step 2 that we're talking about is step 12. Having gone through this course of action, having gone through the outline in this book, will enable me to find this power. Right, so what happens first? A psychic change, spiritual experience, or connection with this power?
Well, first of all, you've got to have some kind of a connection with a power, but that psychic change then is going to happen as the result of this process that you're going through. So as we look at this, they're talking about the main object of the book is to enable us to find a power which will solve our problem. So first we are going to
wait, I think you misread something there. Which will solve our problem, not help us solve our problem?
Oh, did I say help us solve our problem?
No, you didn't. But isn't that what it's supposed to say based on...
no, it says its main object is enabling you to find a power.
So God's doing for me what I can't do for myself, so I need to determine what I can do for myself and what God does? Is that what that part is? Or I'm working on myself, and when I find too big of a challenge, I'll ask God, I'll go to petition, or... that if I'm connected to this power, it would seem that the only problems I would have would be the ones I still hang on to.
Mm-hmm.
Damn!
Yeah.
Oh, so my resistance, the resistance is my biggest problem to this thing, right? So I'm my biggest, I don't like the idea of that, Ray, of me being my biggest handicap to the experience that they're going to outline here. That I'm going to be my biggest challenge navigating through my own thinking.
You mean no one's ever told you that, Tony?
I know that through going through this process now, but I didn't know that before.
I did say, yeah.
Because I had a genius-type mind, don't you know?
Well, of course.
I was answering questions before you even asked them. I mean, 11 years of in and out, you come up with something. So... that's what this book is about. So what they're saying is, if I could come back to the process in this book, I'm going to survive my thinking. Remember Bill? Bill couldn't survive his thinking unless he found a neutral place to start from. And he's seen it was only a matter of being willing. But Bill really struggled with his thinking, didn't he? Would have Bill been able to go through this process with that type of thinking before he had a new conception? The conception was formulated based on his conversation with his friend. Conception is the formulating of an idea and a game plan to produce a certain result.
Mm-hmm.
How can I choose my own concept if I don't understand the basis of this thing? So, as we go through this, which we've done, let's see, page 46. Yes, we have agnostic temperament. What does agnostic mean?
Well, there's a lot of thought on that. I look at agnostic as one who doubts. Agnostic, one who doesn't believe the way that the so-called theologians believe. But it's doubting whatever is considered this spirit of the universe. They just don't believe that it exists.
So
but it does.
So what's really interesting it talks about to one who feels is atheist or agnostic. I don't know why he didn't put it there. Probably because he didn't want to piss off the evangelicals, right? And true believers, right? Who are in and out of the fellowship. That, like, I was one of those guys, like on the altar Sunday morning, back giving my life to Christ, doing the surrender, doing all that stuff, getting back in the choir, getting a haircut, looking fantastic, and then drunk again.
And I think that he did include all three in that. Those who are atheists or agnostic. He's also including those of us who were evangelical at one time. Because as evangelical as I didn't believe. I didn't believe this would work for me.
And that's the thing. So all three people, okay, buddy, I know I haven't seen you all day. All three people, right? All three people have the same problem. This is my rescue dog, sir. So, okay, lie down here. So all three people have the same problem. And other than having step one, right, and the condition, they all have this fate to be doomed to an alcoholic death, all three of them. But all three of them suffer from the same dilemma right now. And what's the same thing all three of them suffer from? Lack of power.
Yeah.
So all three of us need to go through this. Even as a true believer, I didn't have the recipe to maintain and develop this thing, right? I was trying to do it the same way the church, and I was missing an element or something. A couple wires weren't touching the same way other people's wires touch, right? Because my brain and body was a little more damaged than others. So page 46, yes, we have of agnostic temperament. Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let's make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results.
Even a willingness. Why is that? You ever have anybody unwilling to talk to you? Probably not in this crowd. Right? Just don't want to talk to you. It doesn't matter what you say. First thing you get them to do is be willing, or even willing to even hear you out. And once you get them to be willing, then you could spin the story, right? Any story spinners here? Okay, go ahead.
So, as they say, let's make haste to reassure you. As soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Much to our relief, we discovered we didn't need to consider any other conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of this creative intelligence, spirit of the universe underlies the totality of everything, we began to be possessed of this new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. Three things in this process that you mentioned, Tony. Three things. We have to set aside our prejudice, we have to express a willingness, and we have to admit the possible existence of the very things that Ebby emphasized to Bill.
So what they talk about here, which is interesting, when my sponsor and the guys who are working with me in a group like this, they said when they outlined that I had to have this change, and it's possible to obtain it through this course of action, and all my conceptions didn't work before, all my ideas around spirituality, God, Christ, all that stuff through the church, like one church didn't work, obviously the wrong teaching. I went to another church, all the way from, Roman Catholic to evangelical to Baptist, Nazarene. I was looking for this God thing. Nowhere did I understand that it was through this process that I'd find it. So when I got to this place with this group of people, they asked me, what was my conception of this? And I said, frequency. I believe this thing is a frequency. I don't believe God understands English. But I said, I believe He understands what's going on in my heart and the desire for a different life. and he'll put the people, places, and things in my life as he did with Bill to lead me to a better thing if I could connect this thing. And back, none of you probably remember those old radios that you had to push the buttons and it'd get close to the station, but then you have to tune it with the tuner thing. And that's kind of like this. I push the button. I hear there's something there and the possibility of it. Now I got to tune it with the rest of the steps. Right? Go ahead.
So we found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek him. Thus, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It's open, we believe, to all men. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies, too, to other spiritual expressions that you find in this book. So don't let any prejudice you have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself, what do they mean to you?
So that's really cool. So that means when people talked about their ideas, when I thought about the radio, the transmitter, right, in the car was receiving a signal from a transmitter and the radio was a receiver, right? And that kind of made sense to me, right? And so when they talked about this, and if I got connected to this thing, and the more I got connected, the stronger the signal. And I got that. I kind of, like, it just made sense to me, right? That I could tune into this thing, and what it would do if I went through the rest of it was to be able to hit that station every time I went near it, right? On the radio dial. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, go ahead.
So at the start, that's all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere.
Yeah.
So we use.
Does that kind of make sense? It's not having it now. A lot of people talk about step 2 is you need to have this thing. You need to have a belief. You need to have God. You need to have and that's not what step 2 is about at all. Step 2 is about the idea. If you're willing to walk with us, you can have this experience too. And are you willing to believe there's something greater than you, right? That's created the change in us. Do you believe that this change could happen in you in regards to a psychic change or spiritual experience? When you read the spiritual appendix in the back of the book, it talks about all our members have tapped into an inner resource of strength. All our members, not some of our members, all of them. All of us have the same conception and the same experience, right? Lack of power is our dilemma. Whose idea? All of ours. All of us believe that there's a power greater than ourselves that could create this change. If I could just tap into it. How do I tap into it? Through this course of action. I could have my own experience as these other people had their experience, but I got to start from somewhere. Right? Go ahead.
I can almost hear Silkworth as he is talking in his opinion. He said here, accept the ideas that are outlined in this book and become sold on those ideas and then accept the plan. And I think that's exactly what we just went over in that previous paragraph. Here's the plan. Here's the idea. So we need to ask ourselves just one short question. Do I believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? And as soon as the man can say he does believe or he's willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he's on his way.
So isn't this wild that the questions they ask us is always short and to the point?
Yeah.
It doesn't involve a story. Because if it involves a story, we're going to spin it in such a way we'll even confuse ourselves. Right? Step 2, do you believe or don't you believe? Are you even willing to believe? How's that? I mean, right? Like, yeah, okay. Right? Okay, willing to be willing. And then by walking with us, you can have your own experience and it will reveal itself, right? So it's like this. How many people looked at their cell phone and you're at a range and it doesn't work? You don't have no bars connecting to it, right? And then somebody says, well, if you just stand over here, you're able to connect. Like when we go camping, we got certain places that we go to. We have no cell service whatsoever. One of the campers said, hey, if you go up over there, just beyond that ridge and stand over by, you see this stuff, you get a connection there. I believe what he's telling me to be true. As I start walking with the idea that maybe he's telling me the truth, right, based on his experience, that I could have the same experience if I just go on the path that he's laid out. So I go to that place, and you know what? There's 2 bars. Son of a gun, the guy was telling me the truth. And now I have my own experience by being able to dial out to the universe. How's that? Like, I don't know how much more simpler it can be. So the biggest handicap to this whole thing will be ourselves. And the negotiator in our mind, the balker. Anybody ain't got any balkers up there? Bark, 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 bark. The thing is always going off, right? We're talking, you're thinking and arguing with us. You think you're arguing with us, you're arguing with yourself. Well, I heard this is what I was taught, this. Well, what does the book say? Well, we only know little. No, that's in regards to 12-step work. There's got to be a debunk here somewhere. Well, for me, no, it's not for you. It's for us. If you want what we have, it's collective, right? The story of how many thousands of men and women who have recovered from alcoholism. It's collective. It's not singular. Okay, go ahead.
So this is great news for us. We had assumed we couldn't make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith, which seemed difficult to believe.
Oh, sorry, you got to back up a bit. It's been...
it's been repeatedly proven among us that on this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
So that's interesting, a spiritual structure. And then I went to my spot and said, what do you mean by that? He says, the energy you live in. Wow. The energy I live in, the spiritual structure. When I'm connected, it seems like the world's more full. I notice things more. I'm more in tune to people, places. And when I'm disconnected, I'm more looking at my feet. There's more gloom and doom. The energy I have is dark. It compresses in on my soul, and it's hard to breathe. I get anxiety. I get fear-based. That's the domain I live in. Instinct-based fight or flight. Instinct. Anybody have that? The brain's always going, always worrying, always wonder what they're saying. We're projecting thoughts and ideas, right? Not even God wants anything to do with us. That's the whole thing, right? Why is God doing this to me? Because he doesn't like you. We create this whole doom-based energy. Come on, I can't be the only one. And then you have an experience that kind of lightens you, and your whole soul becomes open. Kind of like spiritual structures, the energy we live in, created by something greater than ourselves that we can't create.
It's very similar to what they said in the doctor's opinion in that interlude between the first letter and the second, where he said that we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane. So this is that building of that simple spiritual structure that we have. And
your job is to read through this to find out who you are in this, right? Who you are and what you struggle with and your ideas that are going to be stumbling blocks in regards to you pursuing this thing. So on the next page, 48, the reader, which is us, the reader may...
So the reader may still ask, why should he believe in a power greater than himself? We think that there are good reasons. Let's have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided that they're firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it's impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there's good evidence, but there's no perfect visual proof. And doesn't science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It's being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world, that outward appearances are not inward reality. And they give us an illustration here. The prosaic steel girder, that steel girder that we can drive cars across. But they're saying it's actually, the strength of it comes from these tiny little things you can't see. These electrons that have circuits and that they bond with each other. They said that these electrons whirl around each other at incredible speed. Their tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and the laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We've got no reason to doubt it. So when the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath this material world and life as we see it, there's an all-powerful guiding creative intelligence, right there a perverse streak comes to the surface.
And so hold it for a second there, Ray. So what happens is it's the same dilemma that we've experienced something through mankind, but we humans put their own spin on it. And they try to harvest it, and they try to make sense of something that don't. So they try to explain it in the best way so you can have your own experience, right? And if you went in, right, like I've watched these shows on where they go into the middle of the Amazon, people who have never had any contact with any other people, and they're living some spiritual ritual-based life. Right, from something from within, that connection to something outside of them, where they have this experience, and it's generational that they pass on, right? And they try to explain it in the most simple way they have. On the next page, in our personal stories.
In our personal stories, you'll find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power that's greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that these matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. There are questions for each individual to settle for himself. But on one proposition, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to,
not some of them, every one of them, the collective experience.
Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. And this power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible.
Which is what? The psychic change of spiritual experience sufficient enough to remove the problem that's killing us. These people are no longer afflicted with an alcoholic mind. They're still alcoholics, but they're not alcoholics of the hopeless variety, right? The problem has been solved. They've entered a daily reprieve. This condition of the mind is no longer present. That's the miracle that the doctor witnessed with Bill. And since everybody who's been through it, they're not dealing with alcoholism every day. They don't wake up with untreated alcoholism saying, what a way to live. Who wants to live that way? Who wants to live with the idea of being free of something, not having to deal with it, as long as your connection with something greater than you is stronger than what your connection with you, or the idea of working with untreated alcoholism every day? You focused on you. Is that not a depressing thought? I'm working on my isms. No wonder you have that look on your face. Okay, go ahead.
So here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare, since they've come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power and to do certain simple things.
Which is the rest of the course of action. They're all saying the same thing all the way through here. As the result of this course of action, not before. Not as the result of 9 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, as the result of all 12 steps. They've entered a relationship with something greater than themselves. Everybody wants, it's happening in 3, it's happening in 4. It's the start. You're on the road, but it really hasn't come to fruition yet, right? It comes as the result, the mechanics of the working of the mind in the application of these spiritual principles that have you focused on something other than you. Sorry, I had a moment there, Ray.
That's because of the results then we have from what they described a couple pages earlier, where they set aside their prejudice, they became willing to believe, and they admitted the possible existence of, and now they're telling us as a result of that course of action, this is where they come up, that they believe in a power greater than themselves. They take a certain attitude toward that power, and they're continuing to do certain simple things. And in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them.
What an order. I can't live like that. Happiness, peace. There's got to be some chaos somewhere I could work on. Right?
Remember, they were referring to us back in chapter 2, this very same process. They said that we'd come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. But when we're approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, they're describing then this process that they were exposed to. And so as they say, that in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of total failure of their human resources, they found new power, peace, happiness, a sense of direction that flowed into them. Flowing means that you've started to remove obstacles in its path. That's one of the things that they just have described. We're starting to clear out the blocks that we have to this belief process that we're going to put into effect. And they said this happened soon after we wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going in life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell us why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them. And when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith.
So which is interesting when you have people talk about their experience with the steps, they're more interested in talking about their experience with the steps.
Yeah.
Not not this consciousness they got as the result of it. That's why the second half of How It Works talks about this relationship and cultivating and developing and growing an understanding and effectiveness. It doesn't talk about how well I work the steps. You can concentrate on the steps so much that you have no relationship with a power greater than you whatsoever. That's why so many people are confused that I've been working the steps and they relapse. But did you get the experience that the steps were enable you to get? They say, what experience? The obsession is left. I don't think about it. That's not the experience that they're talking about. Everybody's focused. The obsession is left. So the miracle must, then they're misunderstanding this illness. This illness you can't see, feel, and touch. It's a phenomenon. That's what makes you powerless over it. Because if you're able to see, feel, and touch it, then you wouldn't be powerless over it. I want to be my own solution and apply God only when I need to. Right? How much money would you like? Just enough where I don't need God anymore. Right? So there's always the stumbling block of self, right? So
before you on, Tony, that's a very, very strong point, because the authors are going to come back at the end of chapter 7 and reiterate this and put it in this context. If you want to recover, develop a relationship with God. And this, they're saying, here's that's the beginning. Let's clear out the blocks of that and start on this path.
So I'd like to get through this. So page 52, this is interesting, right? Because remember they stopped talking about alcoholism on page page 44. Now they're going into the human condition and the struggles within the mind, right? And as human beings, the struggles we have in the way we look at things, the way we process information, the way our brains take over, we can't hear what's being presented anymore. So here what they're saying, we had to ask ourselves, page 52.
We had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view.
You notice it didn't say alcoholism.
No.
Right? we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems.
Our human problems, yeah.
Right? So once alcohol is removed, I need a solution for the human dilemma. I need a solution for me. What used to be a solution for me was alcohol, and it stopped working. I need something bigger than the draw of over there, and I need something to remove the thing that leads me back to something I don't want to do. I need something bigger than me that I don't have doing acts against myself anymore by returning to the insanity of the first drink. The doctor talked about this is repeated over and over unless the entire psychic change occurs. There's very little hope of this person's recovery. Go ahead.
So we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view we were having trouble with personal relationships.
And this is not alcoholism. This is the human condition. This is human. This is, if you've never had alcoholism, you'd still have these problems. Relationships, blah, 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 blah. How we found a solution was drinking, and it didn't work anymore. Most of the 12-step fellowships all have these things. Why? Because of the human aspect of this thing. How many people know people here that are not alcoholic that have problems with personal relationships? We're not even going to talk about the news. No. We're just going to move on. Okay, go ahead.
Not only did we have trouble with personal relationships, we couldn't control our emotional natures. We're prey to misery and depression. Couldn't make a living.
So pray. P-R-E-Y.
P-R-E-Y, yes.
Pray.
Victim too.
Right?
Yeah.
So it sits in wait. Right? And we find it. It finds us. Go ahead.
And we couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We're full of fear. We're unhappy, and we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we could see newsreels or lunar flight? Of course it was.
That's why you have people talking about their problems in meetings instead of the solution. Most people are problem-oriented. I want to deal with this problem, that problem. If they had a solution, then they'd rise above their problems, and their problems wouldn't be consuming them, owning them, eating their lunch for them. They'd find this peace, happiness, and contentment in being able to navigate through this stuff. Right? Go ahead.
So when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance on the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas didn't work, but the God idea did.
So that means for those of us who've been through this, when we sit in meetings, it's not talking about how well we work the steps and know the steps. We talk about our experience, the steps got us, and how we're no longer afflicted with the same experience we were before taking the steps. We have a new freedom, a new happiness, right? We don't regret the past. We have this safe harbor within inside of us. And so when we talk about over here, and I wanted to get into this thing where they talk about we only got a couple minutes, so we're going to hit here on the next page. Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? Page 54.
Did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we've been faithful. We've been abjectly faithful to the God of reason.
So what they're saying there, what they're saying there is, I'm already spending energy, but I'm spending energy focused on me. My direction is inwardly faced instead of outwardly faced into something connected greater. I'm going to spend this energy somewhere. They're saying you're already doing this, but in belief of your own ability to think and make decisions and all that other stuff, well, you always end up going back to the same place you're trying to get rid of. You're doing the same principles, but they're not effective for you because you're still applying you to you. You haven't brought in the element of something greater than you. It's like one-ply toilet paper. It's not a good experience, right? 2-ply, you bring the fellowship in. 3-ply, you bring God into it, and you have the Charmin experience. Way different. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you got to have faith in the toilet paper, Tony.
That's it. Never bought a brand I didn't like. Okay.
Oh, there we go. But see, this comes back. Was the beginning of the argument. They started back here on page 47. That they've continued through because they're wishing that I wish I had the faith that you had. If I had the faith that you had, I'd be able to live better.
Yeah, but I'm not willing to do what you did to get it. Can you just can I just do a Burger King sobriety drive-through style and order it at the checkout window and pay for it as I go through?
And that's exactly what the authors are driving us to. They said, look, you say you don't have faith, but you got faith. You got faith in your own reasoning. You got faith in your ability to think. And you've been faithful to the God of reason. Not only that, we've been worshipers. What a state of mental goose-flesh that used to bring. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then with a better motive, hadn't we worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower?
Worship, a reoccurring thought or idea that I spend focus on. Worship is a form of worship. People, places, things, money, and ideas is a form. And other places they call it idol, false god, whatever you want to call it, right? But yet, how much time do we spend doing it? In fantasy
and
land.
the very things that the agnostics are speaking against. And so Bill is drawing this then to this conclusion that we're going to have with this idea. You've already been living by faith. And so if you say you can't, you've already been doing it. So he says, how much of these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing, we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue out of our lives that our lives with which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence?
So this is interesting. So we're a sum result of every thought and emotional transaction we've had in regards to our lives. We've made decisions based on that and ideas to better our lives, but only sometimes to worsen it. Right? So if we were to change the basis of our feelings, thoughts, and direction, the outcome of our lives would change. That's what they're saying, right? If we change what we focus on, what we worship, and what we spend energy on, it'll create a change in our life sufficient enough that we will even enjoy our own company, never mind anybody else's. So we're talking, this is really interesting. So they talk about here, where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. So this chapter is really good to read. A lot of people miss it. So 54 is before the inventory process. This is all about us and how we can't change our life with self. We're missing something. We always end up in the same spot. Why is this always happening to me? I can't believe this is happening. Why? Anybody, stop me anytime if it's somebody else's different story, right? So on the next page, we need a starting point. It's like GPS is God's prayer system, right? So on a GPS, when you punch in the code, here we'd punch in, I need a psychic change or spiritual experience. I need to have this thing that they're talking about. So what would the first thing a GPS do is need to find out where you're at to connect that road, right? From one destination to another. Are we agreed on that? Or it'd have to. So here we know where we want to go, but where are we starting from? That's the key that most people miss. I need a place where my GE, anybody ever drive and they take a different route because their brain started saying, you know what, I'm going to go this way. And your GPS goes recalculating. That's the purpose of the steps, to have this intuitiveness to say, hey, you're getting off track here. And that's the disciplines of step 11. But I need a place to start from. So this is our starting point in step 2 as we navigate through this thing, that I'm making a decision to pursue, right? To turn over, to pursue this connection. Where does it start? Actually, page 55.
Actually, we're fooling ourselves. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. So
it's interesting. And all the time you've been in AA or around AA, and you hear people talk about step 2 and finding God and finding your own understanding. How many people said, okay, I'm going to go look within? I'm going to go look within to the life force that's within me. No, somebody had to teach me that. I didn't come up with that idea, because all my happiness, joy, and contentment was always outside of me in the pursuit of self. Not inside of me. What? This was like, what? And then I kind of went, yeah, you know what? All those times in my life when that voice said, don't do this, don't do that, phone this, that intuitive, this, I call it that life force. That life force that went, hey, what are you doing? Anybody ever have that voice or ask you what you're doing? What are you doing? And you talk to it? I don't know. You ever talk to that thing inside of you, that voice? There you go.
All the time. So it might be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there for faith in a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself.
No matter where you go on this planet, they're celebrating this connection with something greater than, they may word it differently, they may say it differently, but it's all the exact same thing. Go ahead.
So we finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found, and it was so with us.
So where's this power located? Is within. The receiver is within us. That wants to be connected to the transmitter, right? And it needs to be connected. That's the design of it. My radio and my truck's designed for these transmitters. They need to connect in order to operate the way it's meant to. So it's deep down within. So when they talk about this, I never had, see, people describe it, this hole in my soul. No, it was a yearning for my soul to connect to something greater than me, that I'd be fulfilled as a human being having a spiritual experience, moving from the instinct-based life to the spiritual entity that I was designed to be in his image. Right, to have this spiritual life, to move from an instinct-based, animalistic approach to life, fight or flight, or always responding, reacting, and in conflict, to a place of moving beyond, above that. My dog will always be a dog. He can't move beyond that. I could train him, I could do it, but he will, in his heart, will always be a dog. He won't evolve past that, where we could continuously evolve. Right? But it has to be on a spiritual plane. And when you hit that spiritual plane, that all these people talk about, that since I've come into this way, the miraculous things that have been happening is absolutely mind-boggling. I can't really explain it in a way, but it could help you to have your own experience with it. Go ahead, Ray.
And this brings us back then to what they said on page 50, that the central fact of our lives is this consciousness of the presence of God in their lives. And so, as they say, that we found the great reality deep down within us. It's the last analysis that he's there. And so we can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourage you to search diligently within yourself. Then you can join us on this broad highway. And with this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. So as the authors are telling us this, those are three parts then of this process that we are going through. Sweep away prejudice, think honestly, and search diligently within yourself. Join us then. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you.
See, you need all this information from we agnostics and able to get to the place of being convinced we were at step 3. So this is everything I need to be in a position to move into step 3. Now we're at step 3. So from page 44 to page 60 is the transition into step 3. It talks about being convinced we were at step 3. Then they're going to explain what they mean by that. So this week, read up on how it works, the process that we talked about in order to create this change. And the second half of how it works talks about the experience that these people had and the practicing of these principles, the shifting from the steps and working these steps to working these principles, where my focus is on my relationship with a power greater than myself now, not myself. So I move into second stage recovery, because I see my life is way better in the hands of something greater than me and that connection to it than my connection to myself. right? So I'm convinced that 1-ply ain't what this guy's needing anymore. 2-ply doesn't do the trick, but 3-ply seems to do everything I need. I got the Charmin experience, and I'm hoping you guys have the same thing here. Nothing sticking here, baby. So live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. And I've been working all day. My wife's on holiday, so I got to take the dog out and all that other, take him for a run. So we'll have some questions and period. But what do we need for a great life, Ray?
We need a great life with God.
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 Grant me the serenity.
Serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference.
I really enjoyed today. I missed you guys. Love you all. And we got the Facebook group if you need extra help. Right? We have the talks online if you need this slowed down a bit. And we're going to put this one online next week. And go through the book. There's other talks that expand more on it. But me and Ray wanted to crush it a bit here tonight. Appreciate you, Ray. Love you lots. You're a good man. Even though you got 6 more months than me, thanks for letting me know that every time we talk.
Don't you forget that.
I won't. I don't think you'll let me. Thank you, everybody. God bless.